Hey guys, I don't know about you, but for us, we're really focused about the vaccinations and the new kind of opening up of mass vaccination sites by the state as we go into phase 2. This is going to be next week. We now have a mass vaccination site in Danvers at the Ferncroft. Are other towns talking about this? Because we are.
They're just starting. This is the first I've heard of Ferncroft, so big news.
Well, up until then, I mean, Foxborough has gotten all the attention, Gillette Stadium, and I think that's been very intimidating, to be honest with you, for people over 75 here in Manchester and in Essex. And a lot of people have been calling, the Board of Health and the local offices, and they have no information and they get frustrated. I talked to a couple of nurses who are local, a couple have written into the paper, and there's a lot of chatter around here that the state's been doing such a good job. Governor Baker's been doing such a good job during the entire pandemic. And now when it comes to the vaccines, it feels like, where's the information? And so now that we have the information, it's really welcome. And so basically it's, people over 75, comorbidity rates in your household play into it. If you're, younger than that, frontline healthcare workers, the usual suspects for the first. The general public, I think, is starting in April, so we should just know that. But there are now going to be 4 sites. It's going to be the Aganis Center at BC in Boston is going to be one of them, but they don't have the dates quite yet for that. Ferncroft was one of them, and that starts on Tuesday, February the 3rd. And I think that's a Tuesday. Might be a Wednesday.
Oh,
Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday. Yeah. So it's just really good. It means that it feels like the cavalry is this big on the horizon.
So we do want to point, Erika, out that the state is expecting severe supply limitations right now too. So if people want to learn more about how these are being phased out, they can go to mass.gov and get the timing and phasing plan from them.
I think that's really important, because what I was going to say is the message I got is don't call your local municipal BOH. They won't have the information. The state is not giving them the information. They're keeping it close to the vest. I think that's because they want to keep the information just correct and have no sort of distortion of the facts. Because it's important because of these issues like supplies and logistics and availability and hours, and whether you have to call ahead, you make a reservation, how you do that, etc.
Yeah, transportation is tricky enough. So interesting stuff.
Oh my God. Can you imagine people driving all that way and then not being able to?
All right, do we want to dig into the planning board, Erika?
Yeah, the planning board this week was, I think I used the same words with you last week or the week before, which is a lot of heat on the planning board. A lot of stuff happened in the meeting this week. We did not write about it in the Cricket, but Greg Federspiel did, who is the town administrator from Manchester. So we're talking Manchester Planning Board, by the way, not Essex. The process of, we've talked about this before, the recodification of the town zoning regulations is going on right now. Basically what it is towns do this. Recodification just means recoding and streamlining and fixing all of the hanging chads of all of the patchwork zoning that's taken place over years. And there are people who specialize in this. And in this case, we've had a consultant for the last 18 months who's done this for many, 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 many towns. He's rewritten their bylaws. It's essentially modernizing them, making sure that they make sense, they work together and they make sense. And then sort of looking at the things that don't require a new bylaw or a new approval, but have to be sort of shored up. So it's been going on for a while. This is not about the LCD we've been talking about, the limited commercial district. That's going to be a bylaw that's going to be subject to public hearings and then be put on the warrant and go to town meeting. Another thing that probably is not a part of this, although it's connected, we've talked about accessory dwelling units, ADUs. That's also something that is going to be a bylaw. It's going to have hearings. It's going to go to town meeting. But those have big impacts because essentially the planning board is really trying to find ways to widen the type of housing so that people of all different stages of life and stages of income, I guess, have places that make sense and that are here in this town. So that's what's going on. That's sort of colorful enough, right? Okay, let me tell you what the third bylaw thing was, and it came over the fence this week, and it was quite dramatic. Gary Gilbert gave a recommendation to make the planning board what many towns actually do, in all fairness, appointed and not elected.
Ooh.
Heather's favorite word is kerfuffle, by the way.
It was quite a kerfuffle.
That's a kerfuffle.
That is a
That
kerfuffle.
could be a town-wide kerfuffle. Ooh.
Well, it will be. I mean, it's going to have to, listen. Okay, let me give you the bottom line first. Yeah. It passed. It passed a vote with the planning board, which gives you an idea of what's going on with the planning board. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, by the way. It does not mean it's going to happen. What they voted on was to actually take this to the Board of Selectmen and also to make sure that this has public hearings so it can start the process to make the planning board more of a board, in all fairness, like other boards that require technical expertise. Things like the CONCOM, the Conservation Commission, is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. You don't vote in the Conservation Commission. The reason why is it has very specific and very nuanced and difficult and challenging regulations that need to be actually legally enacted. You are a legally enacting board, so you need some expertise. For instance, the CONCOM, Steve Gang, he's the chairman. He is also a Board of Trustees member over at the Manchester Essex Conservation Trust, and he's the chairman of the board of the Conservation Commission. He's an environmentalist, he understands. John Judge was just appointed. John Judge is, I believe he's the president or the CEO of the Appalachian Mountain Club. Do you know that has the Appalachian Mountain Trail? That's him. He lives in town and he's an environmentalist. So CONCOM has to have environmental people. We have the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, that's appointed. And that's a really, important thing. Finance Committee, appointed. So they want the planning board to be just like that. They don't want it to be elected. The backstory, of course, is the planning board has been the site of a lot of, as we mentioned last week, unfortunate clashes. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't think it'll get taken. There's too much going on in town right now. It seems like the Board of Selectmen are probably not looking for yet another thing to take on this year, but it's in the system now.
Is this ultimately the Board of Selectmen's decision, even though there will be public hearings?
Yes and no. It's the Board of Selectmen's job to shepherd this for a public hearing. That's step number one. And then if they want to advance it, it's their job to advance it as a bylaw that will get voted on at town meeting by a majority. It's a majority vote at town meeting. So either this year or next year, if at all.
Okay, how about something nicer, Erika, and Olivia Turner's latest article?
Yeah, Olivia Turner, who we did the election, she's been writing for us. She's an MERS. She's a Manchester Essex High School senior. Too bad she's leaving. But she's a really talented writer. She's written for us since last year, and she's done some pieces for you. And I think she's going to be doing some stuff for 1623.
Yeah, we've gotten to know her. She is lovely and so skilled already.
She's a really, really amazing writer. She wrote a great piece. I highly recommend people to read it. But she went around and interviewed fellow students about how they've grown, Gen Z, gaining wisdom by being quarantined, and basically what have they been learning by essentially being with themselves a lot and isolating. And that kind of thing you think goes to a place that's kind of like a little sad, a little victim-y. She has a really optimistic idea about it and really admires her peers for all the growth that they've done. And she does it in a way that's so beautifully written. And she's really optimistic. And they all feel pretty optimistic about getting back to not normal, but reintegrating back into what used to feel normal.